but that's okay. But anyways, I was surprised and very happy when the church contacted me to speak tonight. Son Nieswander and some of the people here saw an article in the newspaper from Findlay's newspaper back in November for a deer I shot, which unfortunately that deer is not here tonight. It's still at the taxidermist. But I'll get to that here in a second. Again, my name is Brandon Salyer. I'm from Newark, Ohio, which is actually just east of Columbus, and lived there and grew up. My dad and brother came tonight to see me speak, so that was nice of them. And then grew up there, moved around a little bit. Me and my wife now live in Findlay and have for the past 2 years. I never actually started deer hunting until I was about 20 years old. I'm 29 right now, and I've definitely been blessed and feel that way. And I believe anytime God's blessed you or done anything for you in your life, if you have the opportunity to share, then you definitely should, which is why I'm here tonight. You know, they asked me to come speak for the Wild Game Dinner. I know I'm going to talk about my deer here in a second. But first, I want to share another story with you. I actually wouldn't be alive or here today if it wasn't for God and a certain event that happened back when I was 20 years old in the spring. So, that's me back when I was 20 and my friends Jeremiah and Charlie. We did a lot of stuff together, always very outdoors, camping, hunting, and stuff like that. One night, we decided to go canoeing. It is night. We decided to go canoeing down Raccoon Creek in Newark, Ohio. And normally it's fine, and it's a good canoe trip. Usually takes about 3 hours to do. But this night, we decided to go out at midnight during a flood stage. And this is what Raccoon Creek looks like during a flood stage. We were a little adventurous and thought we were invincible, like a lot of kids do. And we had helmets on, life jackets, flashlights, and thought we knew what we were doing. So we started off canoeing at about 1 a.m. or midnight. And this whole process lasts only till about 1 o'clock. And it normally takes 3 hours to canoe to the finale. It only took us an hour. So that tells you how high it was. But started off canoeing, and it was going great. And then towards the end, you hit these huge rapids. And after the rapids, it's a nice smooth part to the finish. But we hit the rapids, and as soon as we got halfway through, the canoe flipped, and I lost my flashlight, I lost my oar, I lost everything. The other two guys I was with, Jeremiah and Charlie, they held on to everything somehow, but I didn't have anything. And so we get over to the side of the creek, and I'll kind of show you what it looks like. We got to the edge, and to the very far left of the screen there, and got over, and got out, and then where the arrow is pointing is actually an overhead dam, and that's something we'd canoed over before, but not during a flood stage and not at 1 o'clock in the morning. But my buddy Charlie thought it would be a good idea if we did it, and we trusted him. That was a dumb move. But we decided to go over it. We thought we could make it. So that dam, that waterfall, is normally about a 10-foot drop. That night, it was about a 4-foot drop because of the thousands and millions of gallons of water pouring over top of that. So here we go. We start to go, and I'm in the front. I don't have anything, so I'm just along for the ride. And as soon as we go in the water, I'm underneath the water. And the last thing I remember is my buddy Charlie saying, "Jump and swim as fast as you can." Well, that was easy for them because they were out of the water, but I was already underneath the water. And that dam has a waterfall, and you get stuck in that circle of water, and it keeps shoving you underneath the water, and you can't get out. And I was starting to swim. I had no idea which way was up, no idea which way was down, and swimming for my life. And it finally got to the point where I was completely exhausted, and I could not swim anymore, and I just kind of gave up. And you know, they say your life flashes before your eyes right before you die, and I was only 20. I didn't have that much of a life, but what did flash before my eyes was my current life, and just thought of my family, my friends, and everything else I was going to miss out on life because of this stupid idea to go canoeing. And about that point, I couldn't breathe anymore, or couldn't hold my breath anymore, so I started sucking in water and coughing up water and vice versa underneath that waterfall, because I kept getting stuck in that. And, you know, if anybody here thinks about death and dying right now, I'm sure nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to die. It's a scary thing to think about it. And oddly enough, when I was faced with that, and right now I don't want to die either. It scares me. But when I was faced with it in that situation, being a born-again Christian, I knew where I was going when I died. And honest to God, in that moment, I was not scared at all, and I had a complete peace about what was about to happen to me, which is very strange, but it was. I had very calm peace. So I started to pray, and I didn't pray for God to save me. I didn't. I prayed for God to be with my family, be with my friends, and for the other two guys that were in the waterfall with me, and just said, God, you know, if this is it for me, this is it, and thank you for a good life. And about that time when I said amen, I started to pop up out of the water. Even though the current was pushing me towards the waterfall, it felt like something was pushing me away from the waterfall. And this is not the exact setup, but this is exactly what it looked like. And I was floating towards the bottom of a tree that was uprooted just like that in the creek. And I heard my one buddy on there, and he saw me, and he got it just as bad as I did. Excuse me. And I didn't have any energy. And so he picked me up out of the water, put me on the log, and we could not find our friend Charlie. And we thought for sure that he had died. And it's just kind of weird, but I remember asking Jeremiah what time it was, because we needed to tell Charlie, his parents, what time he died. It was that serious. And what had actually happened was Charlie had taken a canoeing class or something, and he knew if you're ever caught in that, to take off your life jacket, because that's keeping you in there. And he swam to the bottom, but smashed his head on rocks as he was swimming out, and actually floated down Raccoon Creek for quite a while. When he came to, he didn't know where we were, and we didn't know where he was, and he couldn't hear us, and he was screaming for us, couldn't find us. So he went and stood up in the middle of State Route 16, goes from Columbus to all the way through Zanesville, I believe, and stopped the car at 1:30 in the morning on the highway and said, call 911, my two friends just died in the river. So it was a really scary situation for all of us. And we didn't know this was going on at the time. We thought he had passed away. And Jeremiah started to climb up that log because we had to do something, and I couldn't move. I was lucky to be alive. And climbed up to the top and jumped over to the bank and said he was going to go get help. About that time, we started seeing police lights and sirens, and Newark Search and Rescue, the dive team, fire department, just about everybody came out and pulled us out of the river or creek, and cut my clothes off, put me on a stretcher, got us to the hospital, and pumped my stomach with water. And that's not a fun phone call to make to my dad at 2 a.m. in the morning to come get us out of the hospital, because Jeremiah's parents were gone, Charlie's parents were gone, they're the only ones there. So that's never a fun phone call. So anyways, the reason I tell this story is because really I should be dead. I shouldn't be here today. I never even started hunting until, that was in the spring. I never even started hunting until the fall of that year. And so I've had a lot of opportunities, and God gave me a second chance. And God gives everybody here as well a second chance at life through his crucifixion and resurrection, and we just celebrated with Easter. He died on a cross so we could all have a second chance at life and be forgiven no matter what any of our past sins are. And there's not a day that goes by that I do not thank God for that opportunity and other opportunities, and that's why I always want to share that way. A lot of people in our pop culture believe that heaven is kind of the default destination. It's where you go. If you're nice and you're happy, that's kind of where you go. And unfortunately, the Bible teaches something very different than that when you die. But the Bible teaches that God gives each of us a chance, and each of us have an opportunity and a choice of whether we want to follow him or not follow him. And in that choice, then we can decide what happens to us. And when I had made that decision back when I was 13 years old, I was very comforted in that fact when I died, or when thought I was going to die, where I was going to go. And it's a very good feeling to have when you're stuck underneath a dam at 2 o'clock in the morning. But anyways, so that happened to me, and then that fall, I wasn't going to step foot in another canoe, so I decided that I was going to try to go hunting. And my brother and my cousin got me into hunting. My grandpa hunted, but he passed away when I was 5, and my dad never really did, but always supported whatever thing we wanted to try. So I decided to go hunting, and I'd rather be lucky than good any day, because that's the first deer I've ever shot in my life, and that's the top middle one here. So that was in Mount Vernon, Ohio, which is just north of Newark, Granville area. Thanks to my brother and my cousin, I had the opportunity to take him. And then the very next year, on opening day, my brother and me were only hunting these 2 bottom deer. We were hunting about 100 yards away from each other, and he shot this buck, and less than 5 minutes later, he came out, and I had the opportunity to shoot him. So that was awesome. And by the way, I'm a big-time bow hunter. I shoot a Hoyt bow. Love bow hunting. Don't have anything against gun hunting, but bow hunting's just way more adrenaline exciting for me. So every deer you see here was taken that way. Next, I moved to Kansas for a while. That's this guy. I never thought I would be upset at shooting a deer this size, but my first opportunity hunting in Kansas, I shot him like the beginning of October, and 3 weeks later I went back out with my video camera to see what Kansas had to offer, and I saw 3 deer bigger than any of these. So it was quite the opportunity. But this year, and why I got asked to come speak, was a deer I shot just south of Findlay, close to Arlington. And I'll kind of give you the setup here. The purple pin, that was where my tree stand is, and to the right is it was beans, and there's a little grass where sheep graze, and to the north of me was all corn, and it's only about 5 to 7 acres of woods there. So I was hunting, and about 5 o'clock on November 2nd, and I decided to do a grunt and snort wheeze sequence because it was the beginning of the rut and the deer were kind of active. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's just an aggressive deer call to where a dominant buck, if it's in the area, will hear it and come looking for a fight. I brought a grunt call, so don't laugh at me. I'm going to try to do this because I know there's some kids and people here who don't hunt, but you can get an idea of the sound that I made that got this buck that I shot, which you'll see in a second, to come running into me and make me about pass out. But here, I'll do it real quick. This is just what I did to call him in. So that's what a grunt and snort wheeze sounds like. So, anyways, so that's it. I mean, it was a little bit longer and a little bit more sequenced than that, but I mean, that's all I did. And where the red star is, that was standing corn, and I just heard something charging through the corn, coming right at me. And when I saw this deer, it had corn stalks in his antlers and was looking for a fight. And I swear to you, I started shaking. I had to hold on to the tree so I didn't fall out of it. And God settled down. I just started praying that God, please help me to make an ethical shot on this deer if I get the chance, and not to die. But anyway, so he came out at the red star, and that's a fence line there, and kind of made his way from the right to the left. Where that star is about 90 yards. I had my bow, and so he stopped at the edge of the woods about 50 yards away, and I could have shot him. I shot at 50 yards before, but I hadn't practiced that much, so I decided not to choose to shoot him and take the risk at a deer this size at that far. So this whole thing took about 30 minutes, and he kind of circled around to about where the blue star is and made his way. It's kind of semi-circling by me, and it was a little cat and mouse game of me snorting and quiet grunts and keeping his attention so he would come back around. And finally, the wind was blowing north to south in that picture, and so he circled around to try to get my wind. And I was on the tree stand behind me, and I had to lean out and around at 15 yards and shot him. He only ran 30. and I got him. So that's how I got into the Findlay newspaper and stuff like that. He scored like 183 something gross and 175 net, and he's at the taxidermist right now. His bases were almost 7 inches around, so he had a lot of mass to him, and it was a big deer. I felt definitely like a little bit less of a man when the 85-year-old farmer helped me pull him out of the woods. So my wife makes fun of me for that still. So when I shot him, I saw right where he landed. I wanted to call my wife to tell her, because she actually bow hunts with me as well, but at this point in time she was 6 months pregnant with our son, so she couldn't get up into the stand. But I called her. I was shaking so bad because the adrenaline wore off. I called 3 people before I called her first on accident, and it's a true story. And finally got a hold of her, and I waited for her to come out there before I went and tracked it. And I saw where it landed. She came out there, went and saw him laying down on the ground there, and I just knelt by the ground and prayed and thanked God once again for just amazing opportunities He's brought my way. And I know I'm lucky, and I know I'm blessed for what's happened. And definitely thankful. That's the picture that was in the newspaper, and this is me next to him. I don't know exactly how much he weighed, because we didn't, field dressed him and whatnot, but we took him to D&H meets in Van Loo, Van Loo, and took him to D&H meets, and the does we shot this year were about 90 pounds of meat. He was about 160 pounds of meat they got out of him, so he was a big boy, and love eating him. But that's about it, and that's my wife. Thankfully, thanks to her, she's definitely been a big proponent of us getting together and hunting. She shot that doe this year when she was 5 months pregnant with her bow there, and we just had our son, August, who is in the back there, but just had him, and hunting is a big part of my life, and it's a big family thing, with hunting with my brother and my cousin, and we always text each other and say, hey, what did you see today? What did you get on trail camera? And definitely look forward to sharing the experience and carrying on the tradition with that little guy. So it's our first son. So thank you guys for letting me come speak. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great night.